the charge nurse just gave sign out for the whole unit, and the oncoming nurses were sitting in the room just, smoking their cigarettes during sign out. And I'm like, oh my God, you got to start every day stinking like cigarette smoke.
Of course,
Like
you guys
tearing
did
up
that.
over
Yeah.
here. I'm like,
Yeah.
man, me and Haas really got to work on
I
developing our
know.
wisdom. I'm
Michael's
like, haven't said anything that beautiful in 5 episodes.
Good morning. Welcome to Banter at the Bedside, where the bad meets the real online. I'm Haas, one of your hosts, and I want to welcome you to a new episode today where we have 2 new wonderful guests that we know very, very well. So we're really happy to have them on for today. You're one of our first new guests to arrive, and our 2 co-hosts are off for today's episode. First, I would like to introduce my co-host, Abby.
Hi, I'm Abby.
And first up from our new guest today is we have Michael.
Good morning. I'm Michael.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, I have been a nurse since 1988 and started out in what was called C1, which was the cardiac unit, and did that for about 12 years before going back to nurse practitioner school and eventually winding my way back into the CICU as a provider. But pretty much my entire career has all been in cardiac, and most of that cardiac intensive care medicine.
All right. And our second new guest here today is Ava. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us about yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Ava. I have been a cardiac intensive care nurse for just shy of 20 years. So I actually remember stories of Michael before I even started on the unit. I think I heard about him in my interview.
So you and Michael
wonderful.
had worked together for pretty much 20 years.
Pretty much 20 years. He was in the APP position when I first met him, though. He was off of cardiac intensive care.
It's so interesting. I don't want to say crazy. It's so interesting. And you both were there in like senior staff when I started and when Haas started too. So you guys kind of like raised us a little bit in the cardiac ICU. Definitely me.
Me too. Definitely.
Happy
Me
to
too.
be there.
Now, before we get started, everybody, we just wanted to let you know that this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. The opinions that you hear from all of our guests and the co-hosts are our own. They don't represent a specific entity, employer, institution, or hospital that we may work for or have worked for in the past. It's like comedy, more for hopefully for educational purposes down the line, and really just to start the conversation with all different walks in the healthcare world. So we're excited to have you back again. And for those that have been following, we really, really appreciate you. So if you're listening to this on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube, please hit that subscribe button, give us a like. And if you like that, please send it to your friends. So I'm going to pass the reins now to Abby, who's, if you guys don't know, she's the brains behind this entire thing, and we would all be lost without her. So I get to come, smile, say some crazy things online. So she usually kind of has us all scripted out in the best way. So I wanted to thank her for all of that and also just swing it right back so she can get this episode started for us.
That's so nice of you. So I really wanted to bring on some ICU seniors to really discuss the changes. Medicine is always changing. I think the last statistic I heard, I could be wrong, but like our body of medical knowledge doubles like every 7 days or something. Like it's really quick. Things are changing so quick now for us in healthcare. And I thought it would be interesting for our audience to really understand where we've come from and where we're at now. So I wanted to pull in some really senior nurses, providers for us to kind of hear their journey, how they've seen healthcare change. So let's just open it up. Do you guys have like one big change that you've noticed? What is the one biggest thing that you have noticed change since you started?
Michael, I'll let you start since you are the most senior.
Okay. Well, I think really the biggest thing is just technology. Even when you were talking to open us up, I was thinking about that. And, no one now can even perceive that we used to come into the unit to work with no computer. Your paper charting, the dot matrix printer that spit the labs out. So the digital age technology that has changed things so much is probably the biggest thing that has happened over, the almost 40 years I've been doing this. That's
For
certainly
me, I think Michael is totally correct on the technology thing. Just since I've been there in 20 years, there have been so many changes in the technology and the way that we're using it. I think Michael got to see the difference in how we chart and record um, things. And then in my career, and of course, Michael's still in the field and he's seen this too, but we've changed the way we use technology to touch the patients now. So now we have internal devices that we would never even dream about that we're using every day now, such as impellas, and the way even our existing technology of balloon pumps have changed in the cardiac world. Those are, for our sister that doesn't know cardiology, those are devices that we use to help hearts rest as the patient recovers. But I also think a big change since I've started is the way that we utilize nurses in the field. I think that we are definitely used a lot differently now. We're more of high level documenters, and we are.
That is such an Ava way of saying that. And I love it.
Thank you. We also are MacGyvers. We get to troubleshoot a lot of things at the bedside for patients, whether it be a social circumstance, a family dynamic, how medicines are interacting with the patients. I think that's a big change where nurses, as far as I understand from talking to nurses that are my senior, we were doctor's assistants, which I like being a doctor's assistant too. So
I really like how you said MacGyver, because I tell people in the hospital all the time, if you can't figure something out with a human, grab an ICU nurse, grab a respiratory therapist, and they're going to MacGyver the heck out of that thing. And when you come back, the patient's going to be all sorted out and beautiful laying there, and we get to do our little piece. So yes, love that comp.
Do you guys remember your first day in the ICU? Like your first day ever working in the ICU?
I
Or is it
remember,
all just kind of like a blur?
there's a lot of things I don't really recall from that long ago, but when I started, there was really no such thing as a hospital orientation and all that. I had a grand total of 6 weeks of orientation and just came in on day one and met my preceptor, and we started at it, right then. Um, Interesting, my very first day at work, my assistant nurse manager had just had a baby. So I walked to L&D with our nurse manager to go visit, which I thought that was kind of odd, but she took me along. So I went, but it really was
That's
just jump
amazing.
in and start, not all the classes and things that occur now. We really, it was all on the job in the unit training.
That's so fun. That kind of speaks to how nurses behave and bring each other in just like family. So I think that's something that hasn't changed. I think nurses treat each other like family still, especially on our unit. But that might be a unit specific thing, but our unit is definitely family for sure. So my first day, I had the pleasure of having 2 balloon pumps and 2 different patients side by side. I had never heard of a balloon pump before. We didn't learn that in nursing school. So that was a shocker, to say the least. And like Michael, my orientation was 12 weeks. So we've gradually increased this over the years. Now it's 16 weeks. Yeah, got thrown in first thing, didn't know anything about a balloon pump, but we made it work.
You survived.
Survived.
That's crazy.
Michael, I was remembering a story that you told me when I first started working with you, where a patient got rolled. This was back in the day up in the North Tower, and it was a neurosurgery patient. And the nurses were sitting at the desk just smoking cigarettes. And the surgeon called and he's like, "Girls, I got a hot one coming in for you."
Oh yeah, that was actually one of my wife's stories from the old neurosurgeons.
Yeah.
Interesting though, but those guys then really owned the unit, and you were somewhere else, and especially that particular unit. If you were at a different part of the hospital, it didn't matter if you were an adult, a pediatric, or whatever. Those guys would just rip the cords out of the wall and push the bed down the hall themselves and just burst in. Yeah, my wife has great stories about that. I don't know if there were stories that good from cardiac, but
They probably weren't encouraging smoking even then in the cardiac unit.
yeah, that was one of the things I wrote down was, it was every day getting sign out because we just did report in one big room. It wasn't the nurse to nurse. The charge nurse just gave sign out for the whole unit. And the oncoming nurses were sitting in the room just, smoking their cigarettes during sign out. And I'm like, oh my God, you got to start every day stinking like cigarette smoke.
I think that's Ava's dream. That would have
That
been.
sounds amazing. I'm not a smoker for the record, but sounds really cool. It sounds cool. Okay. Everybody looks cooler with a cigarette in their hand. No, but don't smoke. Okay, don't smoke.
Just pretend. Get the fake
Pretend,
ones. Okay.
yeah.
Are there any favorite stories that you all have of the ICU?
Can I tell a story? And Michael can elaborate on this one
Yeah.
because it's really his story, but this is one of the stories that my preceptor told about Michael, which tickled me deeply. So I guess there was some sort of a staff meeting where they were getting reprimanded, and Michael took it upon himself to write the meeting's points on the toilet paper in the bathroom. I think I'm telling it correctly, Michael. Is that the gist of the story? And then you got caught, right?
I did not even have that one written down. I'm so glad you brought that up because
I love that one.
ICU nurses, like ICU providers, we're all a little egotistical. Let's be honest. Way back in the day when there was no transfer center, if you were Dr. So-and-so you just called the ICU and said, I have a patient. Our doctor would decide where the patient was going to go. When they first came up with that whole transfer center concept, well, then it was just cardiac connection and dealt with cardiac patients only. The grand plan was the intermediate nurses, the charge nurse was going to take the phone call and direct it as he or she saw fit, which greatly disturbed all of us in the intensive care unit to know that the CIU is telling us what to do. Like they can't tell us what to do. And yeah, that generated a memo to say we needed to be nicer. But an 8.5 by 11, when you fold it in half, wraps perfectly around a roll of toilet paper. And so that's what I did. But then someone tattled on me, of course. And the manager reaches out in her pocket and says, some of y'all or pocketbook are not being nice, and plops this toilet paper roll with her memo wrapped around it. I wasn't in the meeting, thank God, but everybody looked around and nobody said anything till one guy just did a quick little smirk, and then the whole room burst out in laughter, and it went downhill from there, the whole meeting.
Michael, I did not know you were such a rebel, especially for all the times that you were like, Abigail, we gotta simmer down.
He knows from experience.
Yes,
he was always trying to guide me.
This is from a point from within himself that he's learned. So
that's right.
That's an amazing story.
Oh, that was so
I think it also just shows that some problems never change, right? Like people above making decisions that affect people down below without asking or consulting, and then kind of our raw reactions initially are always like, well, that's not going to work.
Love it.
So I wanted to ask you all a question. What was it like for me? One of the biggest changes was when we went from paper charts to electronic charts. And how was it for y'all before when it was just paper charts? And how would you even read what providers, doctors, anybody was saying with those little scribbles and all that crap that people used to do? Like, how did things get carried out if you didn't have Epic to tell you what was happening?
It was beautiful. Let me tell you, it was beautiful. Yes, people had to actually talk to one another. Communication was totally different because we had to actually use phones and pagers and the analog things, but
Mhm.
I found that I had better relationships with my providers then because, it was more of a one-on-one dialogue rather than kind of a passive thing. When you're communicating with someone via text, we all know there can
Mhm.
be miscommunications in tone and
All the
other
time.
things.
Mhm.
So, even if I was getting reprimanded, yelled at, um, it was always for the patient. So I never, uh, it only upset me once that I can remember, um, because I had an understanding that if I were getting some harsh words, it was because we're all here to do the same thing and this patient needs to be taken care of. And maybe I missed something or read something incorrectly. And, we have to do everything correctly for the patient. The patient seemed to be the top of the pyramid in our communications. And it is very easy when you have something staring at you in your face to say, this is exactly what I'm doing today. It's written on a piece of paper and it's in front of
Mhm.
me. That's a
Mhm.
whole lot easier than this monster of a chart in electronic form that's in front of us.
Mhm.
I do appreciate now that medicine has changed. We have 100 different disciplines of people we have to communicate with. That would not be realistic in modern medicine. But in what we were doing then with one doctor, usually looking after one patient, every once in a while, ID would come by and write this beautiful long note that was in hieroglyphics that no one could understand. That would happen, but
Yeah. I still don't
it,
understand it.
exactly. So, but it was a different thing, but I found it to be beautiful. And looking back on it now, some things might have been annoying with the scanning and the taking things to the secretary every 5 minutes. It was laborious, but I really can appreciate it now looking back on it with the way that our relationships were formed in that face to face.
Yeah, interesting though, because I agree with that. I was, and at the time we were using the technology that we had, so there wasn't even Al Gore hadn't invented the internet yet, so um, we didn't know what we were missing because you just didn't. You get, but you think about it now. You get a patient in, you call in medical records to bring the paper chart, so you can flip through this thing that's like an encyclopedia, trying to find some old notes. And if they had, and you only had access to what was from our hospital, so if they had bypass surgery at Duke, you had no clue about any of that, of course. Um, but he was
So
also right.
what I really like that both of y'all kind of hit on, and I struggle with that even in this modern day, is that if you are consulting on my patient, I expect that you take 5 minutes to come and face to face tell me what that plan is. Even that 30-second to 5 minute conversation will have much more impact because just like you said, Ava, just like you said, Michael, we are now directly communicating about this patient and this is the plan that we're going to carry effectively forward better than any note that I'm waiting for from a resident, from an APP, from an attending, whatever that is, because you don't get the substance of what the actual plan is, unless it just says, start this, stop this, but that's not what it is. And I try to teach people this, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. I always looked at a note as an impression, meaning that, hey, at the time that I saw this patient, the way that they looked, felt, labs, images, this is what I think. But that's not dogma till the end of time. That could change 4 hours later. I joke about this with my residents all the time. I'm like, you know how many times I've written patient looks great, and the next note is a death summary? Like,
Hmm. Yeah.
I mean, and there's so much still miscommunication too that can happen in the notes. I remember one time I was in an onc ICU rotation and they wrote a note, and me and my preceptor who had started that team, so I'd been in onc ICU for 10 plus years, we spent, I kid you not, 45 minutes trying to find this drug that they typed that they said they wanted to start. And we're looking, and then I was like, well, I think it's a spelling error, and I think it might be this trial drug. And we're diving down all these rabbit holes. And finally, they show up. After writing this note, hours later, we've given up the search. We're like, okay, we're going to do a trial drug. That's super cool. They come in and we're like, so this trial drug, and they're like, what are you talking about? And we're like, this, what, this in your note. And they're like, oh, that's a terrible misspelling. I'm sorry. I don't know what they said, I don't know what I was trying to even say there. And I was like, we spent so much time, me and my preceptor spent so much time trying to figure it out. But like, if you had that communication, would we have put so much stock into that? Probably not. We probably would have been like, yeah, we already know the plan. We talked about it.
Spell check is a miracle, I have to say.
Yeah, it was super crazy. I was like, I wasted so much of my life looking for something that doesn't exist. But I remember, I think one of my first memories with Ava, I want to share just to show how much they do. Senior staff really are important on the unit and are important in, raising medical professionals. But do you remember my first TVP, Ava?
Ooh, I could probably be reminded.
It was you and Jim. So a TVP is a temporary pacemaker wire that we put in into the vein in their neck into their heart to act as a pacemaker until we can get a permanent pacemaker put in. And so the patient arrived and really needed it. Was like heart rate kept really going into no heart rate at all. And my attending on that day insisted that they teach me as opposed to my preceptor, my nurse practitioner preceptor teach me. And he ended up walking out partway through the TVT because he had to go address something else. And so I'm left here never having really done this independently before. And Ava comes and is like, you got this, babe. And went and got help. And then I'm like, okay, well, I got to at least try until I get someone to like really coach me through it. And so the other nurses went to get my preceptor, and Ava's sitting there just coaching me through what to do next and teaching me as I'm doing this for the first time. And it was just so amazing. And the patient ended up okay. My preceptor made it in the room, so it was all covered, but it was just so amazing to have someone, you and Jim, there, seniors that have seen, witnessed, and helped so much, be able to talk me through what to do.
I do remember that vaguely. Yes. So many things.
So many things.
So when I first got up there, the CICU nurses have this specific look, and it was how do I describe it? You guys all had the same hair ties, the same Apple Watches. Your makeup was runway ready, and of all the memes that are online about how CICU nurses look at all the other nurses at the hospital. And I was like, it was intimidating at being a young, fresh attending, this Arab dude that kind of just walked in here. But then after I spent maybe 2 days with y'all, you're probably some of the warmest people I've ever met. So I think a negative stigma about CICU nurses. They're definitely fierce over their patients and do know a lot of shit. So you should listen to them. But that was how I came in. You guys all had this specific look, and it kind of matched everything that you saw on TikTok. But after few days, I'm like, no, you know what? They're actually really, really warm people. So they just know what's going on. That's it.
That's very sweet. We do definitely sync up, we would say, on our look, on our attitudes, on everything. We that's part of the family dynamic. And I think even the male nurses that join our team, they even kind of get into the groove as well. We have very handsome men that work with us as well. Michael.
Yeah, Michael's the exception. Interesting though you say that, because now, when I started, I don't know if we had, quote, the look, but there's definitely the camaraderie. And when I started, turnover was so low in our unit that maybe those 2 or 3 times per year that a nurse was leaving, like we'd all go out to dinner somewhere because it was a really big deal when someone was leaving. And now they just come and go so much that you might get some Chick-fil-A sandwiches at lunch, or maybe not really anything at all, depending on how long they were there. So
Unless Abby's throwing the party. The other day she threw a party for somebody going from night shift to day shift. I thought she was leaving. So I came, I gave her a big hug, right? I was like, oh my God, we're going to miss you so much. She's like, I'm not going anywhere. And I'm like, then why are we having this party? She's like, oh, I'm just going to day shift. I looked Abby directly in the eyes. I'm like, night shift to day shift? She's like,
I love
It's a
an
real
excuse. I'm
thing.
like Ava. I love an excuse to throw a party.
We love a party. My goodness.
Love a party.
But just so
So
you guys know, for our listeners, I'm sorry, we love all of our ICU nurses, no matter where they work. So just saying, you know, that this group was a very special as well too, from the way I met them and just everything else in the background. So we love all of you out there.
It's just the differences in cultures. I think, especially in cardiac ICU, we have to know a little bit of everything because everybody has a heart. So it could be a MICU patient, but with some cardiac needs, or a neuro patient with some cardiac needs, and on and on and on. So, you know, we feel like we do have to know a lot about everything. And so we have to keep our standards really high because we want to do the best job that we can for our patients. So we do hold each other to maybe some unrealistic high standards sometimes, but high standards nonetheless.
who could that be that has very high
Abby fits right in. She loves those high standards.
A question I had for both of you is that when my father, you may recipes, used to tell me stories about what nurses did before to what they do now. Tell me if I'm getting this wrong. I felt that there was a time where, just like you said it, they have a doctor's assistant, where you guys did so much more with more autonomy before the chart masters came in that, you know, limited what you're able to do, and more things got diversified or specialized, however you want to call it. Do you think that nowadays that you do less than what you did when you first started, or you're doing the same or more?
Michael, you can probably speak to that, and then I'll add on.
Well, in some ways we were doing more, but I'm not sure if it was authorized. One of the things I wrote down was, you know, it was a lot of when I started, and even when Ava started, we did not have even intensivists. That came late in the game for me. And it was more of the doctor versus nurse sort of mentality that was there. And then clearly a hierarchy that we weren't at the top of. So we were order followers for a large degree, or to a large degree. But then when you think about the good old days of no restraint orders and no Foley orders and floor stock meds, you know, there were maybe some things being done that weren't all documented. Is that a nice way to say that?
Yes.
With the stuff you had available. So, you know, maybe more autonomy in the fact that we were there alone a lot, especially at night shift. One of my comments I had written down was how much the units helped one another, where now all the ICUs want to compete against one another. It seems like, to say, oh yeah, we're smarter than you because of this or that. But, you know, back in the day, all the ICUs were geographically in one place. And if somebody in the ICU, the cardiac unit, was acting all weird in the head, we called the neuro unit and say, hey, come look at this patient. Or they would, you know, call and ask me to look at EKGs all the time. Like, we don't know what these things are. And so we had sort of autonomy decision making from that aspect, even though there definitely was the clear line of the doctor is clearly in charge and making almost all the decisions, and your job is more carry those things out.
Yeah, for sure. One of the stories that I was going to share was actually to this point. I was relatively new. I had probably been there for 5 or 6 years, and we had just moved over to the new part of the hospital. So we had physically relocated away from our ICU best buddies. And the MICU intensivists, or pulmonary critical care guys, they would run our ventilators, and our cardiologists were the attendings. So when we physically moved over, we lost our doctors that would take care of the ventilators and all of that, fun ICU stuff. So we felt like we were kind of on an island by ourselves, and we really were. We did not have a lot of resources as far as physicians in house went. It was a weekend, it was Memorial Day. Physicians were not in house except for the ones that were on the other side of the world, and they had refused to come to our side of the hospital. So I had a cardiogenic shock patient come in. He had just left the cath lab and was deteriorating into cardiogenic shock. He had no central line, no A line, no assist device, no drips except for heparin, and he was rapidly deteriorating. So I utilized my resources and I called my ICU fellow and asked him to please come put me in a central line and an A line, and he happily did. I called the attending who was at a Memorial Day party and said, "You just do whatever you need to do to save that patient." And I was like, "Yes, sir, I will. No problem. I'll call you and tell you everything that we've done." So by the end of the day, and utilizing all of my resources and being as charming as possible, the patient had a central line, an A line, multiple drips. He had gone back to the cath lab for a balloon pump and was intubated. So we really had to learn how to use our resources at that time and be a little creative and a little charming, and we got things done. But yes, it was there were not a lot of people in house helping us do things unless we used everybody.
How do I clip this out, this one piece that just warmed my heart and soul, to tell everything that you just said, Michael, everything that you just said, Ava, is that why are we in competition with one another? We are all friends. We are here to take care of patients. You do something better over there. You do something better over there. I understand your skill set. Let's take care of this patient. I love that. That was one of the best things I've heard on this pod. Thank you to both of you. I'm sorry, Abby, you were about to say something, and I had to get that off my chest. I
I
loved
love
every.
it. I mean,
It was so good. It was so normal and human. And like, yo, I asked for help. What is the big deal? I'm so. I loved it. Thank you.
no, I mean, I think it's a great point. Like, why are we competing? And I guess my question when the ICUs do compete, what's the scoreboard? Like, what is the scoreboard? Is it number of patients you see in a year? Is it number of patients you saved? That's my question when all of these ICUs kind of compete. Is I'm like, okay, but what is the scoreboard? Like, what are we tallying against? How do you say that we're a stronger unit or we're better in X, Y, and Z? Like, so what are we tracking? That's always interesting. No, I was just going to ask Ava if anyone says no to her ever.
Yes, always. Always. Yeah. I think I went through multiple calls that day, and it took the majority of the day to get everything done. But yes, people definitely did tell me no. Where's your attending? What are you talking about? I'm not coming over there and doing that. Are you crazy? Michael, I have a question for you. I have a question for Michael.
Yes.
What do you miss most about being at the bedside as a nurse? Being at the bedside as a nurse. I know you're still working with patients.
I think, wow, that's a good question. I miss the camaraderie between coworkers. We used to really work well together, and this is one of my points I had written down was when I started working, and Gwen and I talk about this a lot. We had the central nurses station, and all the nurses sat together. So every patient belonged to everyone. Not like now, even myself in my last recent hospital experience, they're like, oh, that's Ava's pod. I don't need to go do anything. It wasn't that way. Everybody responded to the call bell and everybody helped each other out. It wasn't my pod and your pod and this and that. So the teamwork in the unit, I think, was a lot better. And that's really one of the things that stands out to me from back then that was better than the way things are now when geographically the nurses are so separated from one another.
I was just talking about that this week with somebody else, and they were like, "Oh, your building is so nice. Your unit is so fresh and brand new, and this is so wonderful." But Michael hit the nail on the head. When we moved to the new hospital, we were all separated, and that was sad. I mean, we walked through on our first tour of our new hospital, which was the week before we were going to be moving in, and we were all separated and we just could not get over it. We could not get over it. You mean we're going to have to sit at our own desks? Like, how are we going to know what's going on with the other patients? And how are we going to help each other? And I'm not going to know that Susie Q and Pod G is having trouble when I'm in Pod I, like, the normal things. So, gosh, that really brings my heart back to the North Tower. I loved it over there. It was so wonderful. As dirty as it is, I loved it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
got the opportunity to actually train in an ICU in a very old building, and it was just a room. Like, it was so old that it was just a room with curtains. They had like tape on the floor to like designate like that patient's area, and we just had a station. And as the training NP, I sat there and sat with the nurses, and it was so nice to, like, one, be able to see all of my patients at once. Like, they were all right there. I could see what was happening with them right away. The nurse didn't have to, like, come and let me know or update me. Like, I could just see, oh, they're going up on the pressers. They need this, they need that. It was so nice to like just have us all right there. And even as a student, like, I got to know those nurses so much better and so much quicker because I was sitting right next to them for 12 hours a day.
Yeah, it was great.
I think some people forget sometimes that some of the best centers are actually some of the oldest centers in our country here. So they
Yeah.
started out 100 years ago, 80 years ago, and these were the rooms, and other parts of the hospital grew, but that's still where the learning and everything happened. And I think another big piece is that it's not just what your hospital has, it's the people inside of that hospital. It's the staff that's able to take care of these patients. It doesn't matter where you are, if you have the right talent that are there, that hospital becomes able to take care of X, Y, or Z, whether that's balloon pumps, whether that's ventilators, whether that's dialysis, whether that's chemo and radiation. It all really depends on the people that you have. And I think what I can say from spending the last 30 minutes with y'all is that what both of you have said in every single comment always related back to the people. You never once brought up, oh, I know how this looked or that looked. It was always about your coworkers. And that's such a beautiful piece that I think our audience is beginning to understand, that this happens because of how we're sitting here right now, that you're able to have that work family that we talked about, Abby, in our last holiday episode. And that's what makes everything better, because how else do you give up your life? And that's my question. My next question to both of you is, what's kept you in healthcare this long? Nowadays, you're finding people looking for ways out. I'll admit it. I've looked for ways out. I've gone down other avenues sometimes and thought about, you know what, maybe this is not what I want to do for the rest of, after those hard weeks, 120-hour weeks. What has kept both of you here all these years later and still going? Michael left major center and is still seeing patients, is still doing that, even though he's gone through all this crap. So what has still kept you guys with us here? And we're thankful.
Yeah, I think for me, and wow, that's kind of an easy question and a hard question all at the same time. There's something, I say all the time that there's something wrong with all of us that choose to do this for a living, work these crazy shifts. And sometimes, Gwen and I talk about this, in our family, which is one of my big regrets. And I encourage people not to do that now. There's something wrong with us that makes us want to go work these long shifts and put up with the stuff we put up with. But I think at the end of the day, when you can walk out of the building and feel like, man, I have helped someone today, that's where the satisfaction comes from, not from your evaluations or this or that. And I know how we think about administration and all that, but I think like the people looking at on my screen right now, the real boots on the ground doing the hard work, we really do have the common goal of we want to take care of people and try to help people. And I think that's what keeps bringing everyone back. Is it a good living? Yeah, it's that. I make a decent salary for what I do. So, there's that reward that comes with it. But really, the reward is the people you get to spend your day with and the people you get to take care of and especially in the intensive care unit, I say to new nurses all the time, you're encountering these people on probably the worst day of their life. And for their family, it's the worst day of, the wife's life because they were doing CPR on her husband 2 hours ago. And now they're looking at this 24-year-old little curly haired blonde girl to be their source of strength and their savior. And that's what makes, what we do important is, but really at the end of the day, it's knowing that, okay, yeah, I helped someone today and that's a good feeling. It sounds a little whatever, I don't know, but I think that's how we truly do feel about what we do.
No, I think it's beautiful.
It is. The reason why I decided to be a nurse was because a nurse and a doctor had impacted my life so much. I was in a terrible accident when I was about 4 years old, and I had a very dedicated team of doctors and nurses around me that brought me back to life and helped me to grow into a normal person. I mean, without their attention and work, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be alive. I wouldn't have the capacity to be able to be a nurse. And I had a traumatic brain injury, and the portion of my brain that was impacted the most was where I stored my memories.
Oh,
So
okay.
the memories that I made in the hospital were stored in my long term memory instead of my short term memory because my short term memory was damaged. So I can remember being in the hospital, and I can remember what my nurse looked like, what my surgeon looked like, what the hospital looked like. And I can remember conversations between my very dedicated nurse and myself as a little 4 year old, not understanding anything about the world yet. And she was preparing me to look in the mirror for the first time after my head injury. A 4 year old with a very traumatic head injury looks pretty scary. So she prepared me before she wheeled me over to the sink where she was going to wash my hair because she knew that I was going to look in the mirror. And I can remember her holding my hand and telling me very gently that I'm going to be scared, but it's going to be okay. But the memory that I have is not of me being scared because she had already prepared me. I was just a little shocked. So, all of my memories from the hospital were good memories and not scary memories because the people that were working with me at the time were so compassionate. So, I had no other choice but to work in healthcare after my experience. I felt like I needed to pay back what was given to me. I wanted to give that to my patients to the best of my ability. And what Michael said is so poignant. We do get the privilege and the burden of seeing people on their most terrible day. But if they get to wake up for the first time and see a smiling face, I have to be the person that does that every time. So no matter what's going on in my personal life, no matter what I walk into, I don't do this to the best of my ability every day, but I try my best to do this. I want to give people a pleasant person to deal with, and I want to make their journey as seamless and pleasant as it can be in such a hard time. And especially with our patient population, most of our patients have never seen a doctor before. So not only is this their worst day, it's their worst day doing something that they've never experienced before. So if we don't make that a pleasant experience, they may never look after their health again. And with cardiac disease, we have to change the stigma of what a lot of the people in our area experience. They're deathly afraid of doctors and hospitals. So if we can change their mind, as the patient or their families, then we're doing such a larger service than, just what we see with them in the hospital. We're changing our community. And as I've gotten older, I just want to be a bigger part of my community around me. I live in a military town and I get to see people from all over the country, and it's so important for us to make connections outside of just ourselves. So this is the perfect opportunity, and I feel extremely privileged to be able to be a nurse in a hospital.
That's beautiful too.
Of course, you
I think we
both
have some
give us
wisdom to.
goosebump answers and wisdom. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Abby. Yeah,
I'm like,
of course,
like
you guys
tearing
did
up
that.
over here. I'm like,
Yeah,
man, me and Haas really got to work on
I
developing our
know.
wisdom. I'm
Michael's.
like, haven't said anything that beautiful in 5 episodes.
Yeah, and that's what I was just gonna say. I'm like the millennial answers and the Gen Zs, and I'm like, look at these. I mean, I'm not sure if you guys are in that age bracket, but that was what I want people to hear. And thank you for sharing that, both of you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Honestly,
I did, Michael, I think before we started, you said you wanted to bring up something about ventilation to Haas and a big change that you saw. And I just want to see his reaction,
Oh yeah,
his
because
true
I
reaction.
had written down how what Abby said earlier is so true, that the body of knowledge just keeps growing so quickly, and to the point that you can't even know all the things that there are to know. There's just so much stuff out there. But you way back when I was first starting, most ventilator management was just strictly seat of your pants, and almost all the intubations were actually done by respiratory therapy. It was a good while in my career before I ever saw a doctor intubate. RT did it all the time, and they were really good at it. And there were no paralytics being used either. But the thing I said to Abby, I said, I want to see Haas' reaction to this, because every single person who got on the ventilator, no matter what their size, what their age, IMV, rate of 10, 1 liter tidal volume, 5 of P, and the
I don't
morphine.
know if I could.
And the morphine and Ativan drips got started the second the tube went in. Yeah, they laid the longest time.
No, I'm having a visceral reaction to
This minute
like
volume
my
of
core.
10 doesn't continue.
You know how you guys gave me goosebumps before? Like, I need an immediate Zofran injection right now because, oh my God, the criminality of SIMV, that's just an elite
I think
assault.
it was not until the surgical critical care guy started in the year 2000 that I ever heard the words lung protective mechanical ventilation, or low volume.
Michael, I know we're all laughing at and smiling at this component because the reaction that I would give, but man, right back to what you said, right back to what Abby said, just think about what we did to people 20 years ago and how people were accepting mortalities of 35% and patting themselves on the back and being like, hey, we did something good. What do you mean a third of your patients are still dying? How is that good? But I understand that we had to go through these trials and tribulations to get to where we are right now. And so my quick reaction, I think, was you saw your face. My outward reaction will be is we can do better. And I'm so excited for the future. And I'm glad that you thought of me when thinking that. Can you comment though? Can you give me a comment now how you think things are now and how people are doing things now? And you can be honest with me. I promise I won't take it to heart.
No,
Are we doing a better job?
I think clearly we're doing a better job. One of the things I had written down was we did a lot of CPR back then, because we didn't talk to families and we didn't make people DNR. That was almost unheard of. It's like you were a failure as a doctor if you had to say there's nothing else we can do but give them a comfortable death. So that didn't happen very often. There was also not a lot of congestive heart failure because people just died from their MIs. Um, so there was not that. But,
Mhm.
I did. But also at the time, I mean, why did we put everybody on SIMV at a rate of 10? Because that's what you did, and you really didn't know any
Mhm.
better. And it wasn't until, probably that legend called Bob came along where we even knew what a pulmonologist was, or it actually even heard the word. So it
Mhm.
was, RT's intubated, and the RT's told the cardiologist what to do with the ventilator. And I'm not even sure how we wean. I was thinking, how did we wean people off the ventilator? I think until they were breathing, quote, above the vent, even though that meant their tidal minute volumes were 10. So when they got above
Mhm.
that, then we put them on the T-piece. Interesting,
Right.
T-piece was everybody got the
Oh,
Mhm.
T-bar,
T-piece. Mm.
and now it's kind of
Mhm.
come back around again. So some things
It's making its
probably
comeback,
need to
man.
come
We
back
could probably
around.
talk
Yeah.
about that different time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting though.
Delirious as heck from all that Ativan, and then trying to
Mhm.
breathe through a T-piece was a feat.
So if you could do that, you definitely were going to do well once you got the tube out.
Oh, yeah.
You were ready. You were ready.
We were so
Should have
ready.
come up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, just tell us one thing that you wish you knew when you started. What's one thing that you wish you could tell your younger self, or you wish you could tell the younger audience, nurses, or people interested in joining the ICU? Even not even nurses, providers, anyone. What's one thing you would pass on?
I think one thing I would say is understand physiology. And our director, when you started, Abby, always preached physiology, has the has the website named that. Because if you understand why you're doing the things you're doing, then they make more sense. And a lot of stuff was kind of, oh, we do this because of this, but not, oh, why am I putting this guy with a low blood pressure on nitride? Well, it's because I want to vasodilate them and hopefully decrease their afterload and lead to better cardiac output. I mean, that thought process wasn't really something that we did. So as our understanding of physiology has gotten better, I think knowing that makes you a better nurse because you understand what you're doing, and a better provider because it helps you with patient management rather than if with this, then this. Like, oh, if their lactic is up, I'm going to give them a liter of normal saline. I see that now and it drives me crazy. And I make a comment about it every time, a
Mhm.
derogatory comment usually. And so, because it's not understanding the physiology behind what you're doing. So I guess I'd shorten all that by saying understand physiology.
I think mine kind of is in the same area as Michael, but listen and ask questions of people that are not just nurses, ask the physical therapist, ask the respiratory therapist, ask your attending, and listen. Lord have mercy. If nothing else, listen to every single person around you, listen to that patient and those family members at the bedside, and learn something. If your ears aren't open, you're not learning anything. And especially to the generation that is coming to the bedside now, sometimes they have a really hard time with listening because they feel attacked when people are talking to them. And it's not an attack when I'm talking to you, I'm just trying to impart my knowledge on you. And as far as talking to my younger self, I would just say, you're not going to kill anyone today. Just pull your pants up and get in there and get to work. I was always scared to death to come into the hospital. I would sit in the parking lot for 10 or 15 minutes, just willing myself through the door because I thought that I was going to kill somebody every day. It was terrifying, but worth it.
Well, I just beyond being impressed, but there was a physiologist, a pulmonary physiologist who recently passed away, and Luciano Gattinoni used to tell people, and I quote, that physiology is the medical basis of reasoning. Statistics are a tool. And I'm so happy you brought that up, because I tell all of the young doctors that I train every single day is that if you understand mechanism, you can understand picking up a paper and saying, this is going to work or this is not going to work. And I give them this example all the time. Pulmonary hypertension and COPD are the same disease in different locations. They're both low flow states with a high pressure system. They're both diagnosed and treated the same way. If you can understand what smooth muscle does in airways and what it does inside of the heart, you can understand why these medications will work or not. Not because you were able to quote some New England Journal of Medicine paper that you did not understand the methods of how that study was done for you to apply it. It's understanding physiology. And that's what really gives us that professional title, is that, hey, I can tell you why this may work or may not work, or why I think this combination of things, just like you said, why nipride might vasodilate. And you're like, how can you give nipride to a patient with low blood pressure? I won't do that. But if you understand the mechanism behind it of why we're doing it will actually improve your output, then you get it. And you will never understand that unless you have concepts that are ingrained in you from time, not statistics. I can make any P number look sexy. It means nothing in the future of where we are right now. So both of you, thank you.
Can I add something real quick? Because I said the key word,
Yeah.
listen, and that's so important. My very first thing I wrote down from then and now was, we did not have an ICU team. We just had a doctor in charge telling people what to do, and certainly no pharmacist, no dietitian. And so what's really helped over the years is especially physicians, either they've learned or been forced to check their ego. And, I think now when we round as a team, how much does that pharmacist add? Or how much, Haas, have you learned from the dietitian? You've learned a lot from the
A lot.
dietitian. And so all
A
those
lot.
disciplines all add so much. And when we work together like that and everybody's, we know that you, the attending, are ultimately in charge, but we're also operating on the same level of mutual respect and learning from one another. And that's what makes things now really different than it was back then.
What other stories do you have to share with us, Michael? I know you have some. I know you
Oh,
have tons of good
well,
nuggets and stories
gosh,
to give us.
there's
I'm
so
sure
many
Ava does
stories.
too.
Mm.
I think a lot about, when I talked about the camaraderie between units, especially at night when the only people there were the residents that had already been up for 36 hours, and they were out of their minds anyway. And let's face, we thought they were dummies because they were the PGY1, and there wasn't a lot of teaching going on anyway. It was seat of the pants. Night shift, we had so much fun because we could get away with so many things because there was no administrative types there. And this is funny, but I'll remember this forever. Probably late 80s, early 90s, whenever the electric slide came out, and Gwen was listening back there behind me, she would be laughing because she knows this.
Oh no.
White people, we can't dance. So every time the electric slide would come on the radio, we would all pile over to the MICU for the unit secretary to teach us how to electric slide. So we'd be electric sliding that night shift, and that's how we learned to line dance.
Electric
It was really
sliding.
part of just the how people got along with one another and helping each other out. Um, that's one memory. It's silly, but it sticks with me.
We do
Yeah.
really love being silly around the unit. There's so many hard things we have to see all the time. And I'm sure from an outsider perspective, it might look a little uncompassionate sometimes with our giggling and that kind of thing. But sometimes we even bring patients into the laughter, which tickled me the most. I know we're supposed to be patient family centered care and families are supposed to be backstage all the time. But when we still had visitation hours and we had some time alone with our patients, we could really bond with them. And we had a lot of long-term patients at that time. And, they had spent the better part of a year with us. And we had one paraplegic patient that's unfortunately passed away now. But at the time, he was very much alive, and we were reviving him back to health and getting him back in his wheelchair so that he could physically wheel himself down the unit. Well, he was still attached to the ventilator at the time, but respiratory therapy had taught us how to use the transport vent, so we could just pop him on the transport vent anytime we wanted him, out in his wheelchair and out and about. And one of my other Michael coworkers played Eye of the Tiger as we had him out in the hallway, and we had put a
Love that.
little piece of tape across the hallway, and he was so proud of himself, and he was wheeling himself down that hallway, and he broke that piece of tape, and all of us cheered for him. I mean, it was beautiful. And we talked about that for weeks and weeks. It was just such a sweet, kind of silly, funny thing that we did, but it brightened his spirits
Right.
like nobody else. And he was transferred out of that hospital in another 3 or 4 weeks. It was amazing. But we can't do that if we have families around all the time.
They're going to be like, what are they doing? What am I talking about? Well, any other stories, anything else you want to share?
How about this question? Anything for Abby and I? As you know, we're still on this journey. I know, Ava, you're still with us. I know, Michael, you're still with us. But anything for us, as you guys know what we do in the hospital now. And Michael, you know what I do outpatient as well. So what would you tell us?
Tell us or ask us. Because if it's ask us, what one thing, if you had a magic wand, would you change tomorrow?
Oof.
Good question.
And I'm talking about a real magic wand. We can do anything with that magic wand.
Abby, do you want to go first?
I've worked on units. I've been in units where everyone is at a central location. And if I could change things about the hospital, I would love to just put us all in a circle, patients surrounding us, everyone at a station together. As a provider, there's times, and we've touched on it in other episodes, but there's times when I feel sometimes like a bit of a interloper, like I'm kind of crashing the party now. And we have our office now that we're sitting in. And I know sometimes some of the newer people feel anxious coming into our office because it's our office. So I really wish we could get kind of rid of that. And as Michael said, yes, at the end of the day, the attending is making the final decisions, but we are such a team-based health system. And I wish we did more things to build that team. And I think space and location of everyone is one of those things. And safety too. When safety events happen and everyone can see it happening at once, you can get all hands on deck. But when everyone's kind of separated, you might not know that a patient is having, some delirium and getting aggressive with staff. So I would love to go back to the old units where everyone could see everyone and sit together and sit and laugh. I think it would just make work so much more fun and easier to do.
I'm going to give the boring answer. I would say appropriate pay for all the staff, so we can pay our staff nurses, our staff therapists, our staff CNAs, our staff doctors, our staff residents, so that it appropriately compensates for their life. And you guys already hit on this, the life that you lose when you're taking care of people on holidays, on weekends, on wedding days. So that would be my first thing that I would want, is that we don't have to now depend on others, and make sure that you have every single resource that you need. So we're not, going back in the times of MacGyvering things that we didn't need to do. If I can keep the people that I have because they're paid appropriately for the things that they do, and that starts from our secretaries all the way up to our doctors. And I think that if we just got that sorted out, look how much money we spend on travel nursing. Right. And meanwhile, our core staff nursing, who really knows what to do with these patients, is sitting next to maybe a traveler that's making maybe 2x what they are making, and they're still doing their work and don't have anywhere near the experience that they have. And it's the same with physicians. We can't keep enough people on staff that we have to pay some locums folks that are coming in and making robbery money to take care of their patients that the regular staff physician can't do it. So it starts from the bottom all the way, all different types of salaries and numbers. And we've hit this before, Abby, that we don't have enough people that are working at a specific time. We don't have enough resources. So if really magic wand, Ava, that would be my magic wand, because I want to
I
keep
love that answer.
the people that we have, and keep them happy. This is hard. This
Just to put it in perspective for our audience, do you want the guy doing your brain surgery worried about how he's going to pay for his car repair? No, you do not want that. You do not want that. You want your people paid appropriately. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
And if these corporate guys that are running these corporate hospitals now are getting paid more than my physicians, that also does not make me happy.
Good point. Good point, Ava.
Mm-hmm. I know the other half to Ava's what she wants all her doctors to have, but I'll stay on the unit.
They need to be well compensated in all areas of their life, okay?
Right.
No frustrations. We want them to be easy breezy when they walk through those doors, okay?
I like that. Well, this was excellent. We wanted to thank both of you for joining us this morning. You've definitely been stars, and we definitely hope to see you again at Banter at the Bedside. Thank you again for listening, for everybody. And for everybody out there, keep doing what you're doing at the bedside. We love you and we support you.